It's the Brian Lehrer Show on WNYC. Good Friday morning, everybody. Today we continue a series of forums with candidates in competitive congressional primaries in New York. These are also of interest nationally, largely because the New York Democratic primaries reflect tensions in the party and the American people as a whole nationwide. And also, in this case, because New York's 17th congressional district, covering 4 counties north of New York City, is expected to be one of the most in-play swing districts in the country in November, with Republican Congressman Mike Lawler seen potentially very vulnerable in a district that has gone back and forth in recent years. So control of Congress, you might say, could run across the Tappan Zee Bridge. New York 17 includes all of Rockland and Putnam counties, also Westchester, north of the bridge, north of the Tappan Zee or Mario Cuomo Bridge, as you prefer, and southern Dutchess County, from the Connecticut line west to around Hopewell Junction, north of I-84. According to Data USA, the district is about 63% white, 10 to 12% Latino, 7% Black, 5% Asian. Notably, it's got both suburban and rural areas with some small urban pockets, meaningful Orthodox Jewish and Haitian communities, among others, and is genuinely a purple district, voting majority for Kamala Harris in the last presidential election, though the Republican, Lawler, won for Congress. Joining us now to answer some of my questions and yours are the 4 candidates considered the most serious contenders in the Democratic primary based on criteria that we use. For example, they each have more than 500 donors. They are Rockland County legislator Beth Davidson. Her campaign website calls her a bipartisan problem solver. Cait Conley, a former Biden administration National Security Council member and an Army veteran whose website starts with, "She never backs down from a fight." Cait Conley. Effie Phillips-Staley, a Tarrytown Village trustee, a nonprofit executive whose website bio begins that she has dedicated her life to social justice and public service. And Mike Sachs, a lawyer-turned-TV journalist, as his website says. It also calls him the progressive choice for New York 17. So thank you all very much for engaging in this forum and in our electoral process. Welcome all of you to WNYC. Hello.
Hey, Brian, thanks for having us.
Thanks, Brian. Awesome to be here.
And
long-time
it looks
listener,
like
first-time guest.
Ms. Phillips-Staley is not yet hooked up, from what I can tell. And listeners, the format for this forum will be informal and conversational, not a formal debate. I'll pose questions and try to moderate in good faith. There will be no opening statements. There will be closing statements at the end. And listeners, you can pose some questions too. We'll take those by text for this forum since there are so many candidates. 212-433 WNYC, 212-433-9692. And listeners, we will look for questions that seem to come from undecided voters in the district as a first priority to the extent that we can tell. The polls seem to indicate a large current share of undecideds. So it matters, what these candidates say between now and when the voting starts. We ask you, listeners, not to fill our inbox with speeches or endorsements. The candidates can argue their cases for themselves, right? But feel free to text questions that you think might help to clarify something about this field, to help you or others make up their minds. So undecideds from New York 17, first priority if you're voting in a Democratic primary, but anyone else may text a question to 212-433 WNYC, 212-433-9692. And now we have Effie Phillips-Staley also hooked up. So, Ms. Phillips-Staley, hi, you can hear me, right? Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Yes, I can hear you. Thanks for having me.
So candidates, let's start here. I assume that almost anyone who votes in this primary is hoping to flip Congress blue and see Congressman Lawler defeated. So let me invite you each first to take a minute or so and say why you think you're the best position to beat Mike Lawler in the general election in November. Now, we randomly selected the order for closing statements, and based on that, we'll go in a different order for this first question. So, Ms. Davidson, you go first. Why would you have the best shot at defeating Congressman Lawler?
Well, thank you so much, Brian. That is the right question. Mike Lawler has won this district twice for 3 reasons, and I'm the only one in this primary that really neutralizes all 3. Mike Lawler knows this district inside and out, but so do I. As a resident of the district for more than 20 years, I live and breathe the issues of voters every day. I know this district just as well as Mike does, but unlike him, I actually fight for it. It's no secret that Mike Lawler's made serious inroads with Jewish voters. And having served on my synagogue board, I'm a trusted Jewish leader in my community on both sides of the river. My campaign offers a home back to the Democratic Party, to Jews who swung over to Trump and Mike Lawler last year. And I have a lot of support in the Jewish community and the ultra-Orthodox community as well. Mike Lawler's from Rockland, and that's where we've lost this twice. 40% of the primary, 40% of the general. I'm the only candidate who can deliver Rockland County. As a Rockland County legislator, I roll up my sleeves, fight for my community every day, and I led a slate of Democrats to win the first Democratic supermajority on our legislature, so I know I can win Rockland.
Thank you very much, Ms. Davidson. Ms. Conley.
Thanks so much, Brian. So the way we win New York 17, as you mentioned, in a purple district, is by having a candidate that puts all 4 counties in play, that can reach out to the 28% of folks who are unaffiliated or independent, who are registered voters, and be a candidate that appeals to voters as not just a party, but a person. And building that coalition, I'm super proud of what we've done in the Democratic primary, where I'm the only candidate who's been endorsed by elected officials out of all 4 counties. And when you talk about bringing people together in November on Election Day, I don't like to quote Mike Lawler often, but I enjoy quoting him here because he talks about New York 17 being the district of heroes, where over 50% of households are either service members, veterans, first responders, or law enforcement. And my ability to connect with this community, one where my family goes back 4 generations in the district, where as a graduate from West Point and an Army combat veteran, after 16 years and 6 tours overseas, I've already shown people in this district that I will fight for them and deliver real results every day, regardless of how they vote.
Ms. Phillips-Staley, why do you think you would be the best position to defeat Mike Lawler in November?
So I actually think that Mike Lawler has won twice because the Democratic Party has lost it twice. Because when we look at someone like Mondaire Jones, he won as a progressive and he lost as a moderate. Having run for office 3 times in this district and won, I have seen from the inside the degree to which the Democratic Party focuses only on high propensity voters and ignores everyone else, people under 44, Latinos, so many communities. I got into this race to do the work of building the base across the Democratic Party by putting forward a platform that isn't framed by Mike Lawler, but is framed by the needs of the people. And that is all around affordability. So I don't know that anyone else in this race is looking carefully and reaching out to these groups. That is what I am doing. I believe we can win it with a strong Democratic base.
All right. Thank you very much. And Mr. Sachs.
All right, let's blow some minds here. Virtually anyone in this race can beat Mike Lawler in the general election. Why? Because he has never run in this district while tied to the mast of a regime that's dedicated to hurting people. In 2022 and 2024, he ran as a member of an opposition party. He ran as someone who is promising, perhaps in this district, to bring a false sense of moderate ticket splitting to what he threatened would be the excesses of a woke Biden or Harris regime. Right. But what has turned out is that he has been the deciding vote in Trump's efforts to steal and pick our pockets. And then he just puts pennies back and says, look how much I've done for you. Well, in this moment now, the generic ballot in 2024 was like +4 Trump. Now, among independent and non-voters, it's swung to double digits generic plus for Democrats. So I think that right now there is a wave coming. And now it's on us to help make that, to be part of the gravitational pull, to make the wave as big as possible to sweep over Lawler. But it's on the voters and on the listeners of this radio program who are living in this district to pick your wave rider. Who do you want to represent you in Congress? And that's what this forum is.
Thank you very much. Let me follow up with the four of you on some of the things that you talked about there. Ms. Davidson, your website describes you as a bipartisan problem solver. It came up in one of your answers that Lawler touts his bipartisan voting record, relative to many other Republicans as it gets rated by independent agencies. But Ms. Davidson, you tout yourself on your website, as I said, as a bipartisan problem solver. The others don't use that term explicitly, but it's one thing to do that in a county legislature, maybe another thing in Congress in our polarized era. So what would that look like for you?
Sure. Well, let me say that I call myself a bipartisan problem solver because I govern in a way that represents the people who sent me. My current county legislative seat is only 48% registered Democratic, and I won with 57% of the vote. So Republicans and independents already vote for me, and I was sent to New City, our county seat, to represent them as well. And so I would use the same tactics and I would say talents that have made me successful in Rockland in Congress. You reach across the aisle to solve problem by problem. It's how I, unanimously passed gun safety legislation, unanimously recently passed a sales tax cap on gasoline to help people at the pump as we see, gas coming to $5 a gallon. It's just by rolling up your sleeves, finding common ground, and delivering for the people you serve. And that's what I've done in the legislature and what I'll do in Congress.
Would that be your approach? I took it from your initial answer that maybe that's not something you would frame as a priority, but maybe I'm wrong. Mr. Sachs.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear you say my name. So, no, I believe that we have to have a new reconstruction, and that project of renewal will be a purely partisan one. We are now dealing with a Republican Party on the national level that are nihilists, that have been dedicated to constructing a system in which they get to rule no matter the people's will. So when we get a 51% mandate, and it should be treated as a mandate, we should use it to help people as opposed to hurt people, which is how Trump uses his 51% mandate now. And you've seen what happened to his poll numbers in the tank across every issue area, along with Republicans who enable him. It is on us as Democrats, as the party that supports democracy, to renew our multiracial democracy, to ensure that what we want as the majority passes, so we deliver things that help people, like Medicare for all, so that we can turn the page on this era and have Republicans play on our turf if they want bipartisanship.
So a fairly clear distinction there between the first two of you on bipartisan versus partisan approach. Ms. Phillips-Staley, where would you place yourself in that?
Sure. I mean, the job is to represent everyone, is to fight to represent everyone. As a trustee in the village of Tarrytown, I've actually had the ability to work with Republicans, with independents, to pass legislation that actually attacks redlining, that allows accessory dwelling units. These are pretty progressive efforts to solve the housing crisis. And I pride myself in my ability to do that. I mean, look, my father, a high school educated veteran, was a lifelong Republican. And I think that the affordability crisis that we have and the policies that we develop have to speak to everyone. He's the measure. Like, if my policies would work for him, I know I'm getting it right. So yeah, I have no trouble working across the aisle at all. That's the job.
Ms. Conley, same question.
Yeah. Brian, I have to tell you, over the last 14 months on the trail, meeting voters everywhere, what I will tell you we have heard left, right, center, everywhere is that people can't wait another 3, 5, or 7 years for government to do its job and deliver results and actually solve their problems. So yes, regardless of how the balance of power shakes out, we've got to work to actually deliver results for people in our communities across the Hudson Valley, because they can't wait any longer. And I'll also tell you that the dominating sentiment I hear is frustration with both sides of the political aisle. Voters are frustrated with both political parties because they've seen politicians who got us into this mess more focused on getting reelected or the next job than actually delivering results and solving problems. And that has to fundamentally change. I think that's what we represent, is the next generation coming in who's saying, we're going to do things differently. We got to focus on solving people's real problems. And when it comes to beating Mike Lawler this fall, it's got to be, yes, we need to get in there and fight back against the corruption and the greed and the terror that this administration is bringing. What we are fighting against matters. But what we are fighting for matters too. And that means we got to solve people's problems.
Listeners, if you're just joining us, this is one of our candidate forums in competitive congressional primaries in New York. We have 4 candidates with us in NY-17, the district north of the city that Republican Mike Lawler currently represents, considered one of the most high-profile swing districts in the country for control of Congress. Our 4 candidates are Beth Davidson, Cait Conley, Effie Phillips-Staley, and Mike Sachs. Again, we're inviting your questions, which we'll get to some of as we go, in texts today. Just text, no calls, because we have so many candidates here. 212-433 WNYC. If you want to text a question, 212-433-9692. The cost of living is front and center for so many voters this year, almost everywhere, according to the polls. I want to ask how you each think you would be the best one here to effectively address the cost of living or affordability, as many people use that word now, through your work in Congress. And I will note that, Ms. Phillips-Staley, you are the one of the 4 who brought up affordability explicitly in your first answer, so I'm going to let you go first here. Why do you think you would be the best on that issue?
I think the most critical thing here about my campaign and the way I work is that we center the needs of people. And that means when we developed our policies for this race or for this campaign, it was based on talking to people throughout the district and specifically asking them where the pain points were in their budgets, right? And we developed what's called the Suburban Progress Agenda out of those conversations. It starts with housing affordability. That is the issue that came up the most. And the district itself is short 66,000 housing units. If we can meet the goal of building that, that will help level out prices. It will help level out a rent. Childcare is a massive expense for families. That comes up constantly. And so, look, New Mexico was able to pull off universal child care. This country can do it too, and this district can do it too. Medicare for all. Everybody here, everyone is experiencing the crunch of the cost of healthcare going up because of the actions of Trump and Mike Lawler. So we have to think big. We have the capacity to create a new system. And of course, I could go on.
Ms. Conley, why do you think you would be the best for affordability?
So, Brian, this is a struggle that my family goes through and has been going through for generations here. You know, I was raised by a postal worker and a construction worker. I've got 2 sisters who can't afford to move back to the district and raise their family in the communities that, raised us here in the Hudson Valley. And so when we talk about what it's going to take, we've got to first undo the harm. And that means things like ending illegal foreign tariffs that have jacked up prices on everything from prescriptions to groceries. That means reinstating things like the premium tax credits for the ACA and restoring funding to Medicaid, where our most vulnerable can afford health care. But it also means we have to find new solutions to the problems that are plaguing our communities. The housing crisis, yes, there is a shortage, but also we have to make sure that people can afford to buy the homes we are building. And that is where I believe it's time we start implementing an American Public Service Home Loan Program, a program that would mirror the VA loan program that I got to benefit from as an Army veteran of 16 years, where for people who are first responders, teachers, nurses, social workers, after 10 years, you qualify for the same benefits. All it means is you don't have to put 20% down to qualify for a competitive interest rate without paying PMI, because the federal government would back 25% of your mortgage to a private lender. These are programs that work. We need to start expanding them and incentivizing public service and making it so that people who serve our communities can live in them. Sorry.
So it would be certain job categories who would qualify for that help with the mortgage?
Correct, Brian. Focus on public servants so that they can actually live in the communities that they are serving. Because right now what we're seeing is that's not the case.
Mr. Sachs, why do you think you would be the best for affordability? Mr. Sachs, I think you're having a little trouble hearing me.
Okay, I got you now. So one of the great things
ahead.
about being in these candidate forums is that you get a lot of great ideas coming at you, and they're all quite good, and I'm happy to incorporate them as well. But we have to look at the structural issues for why we have an affordability issue. Not only because building an autocracy is expensive when they're using our money to kill people in the streets of Minnesota, but also because we are stuck in what is a zombie Reagan era, where the idea of tax cuts solve everything and greed is good has led to astronomical income inequality between the very top and the rest of us. How do we get ourselves out of that? It's about attacking the very structures that Republicans have built to keep that going well past its expiration date. We need to fix extreme partisan gerrymandering, nuke the Senate filibuster, confront the Supreme Court, so that the policies that everyone else here, including myself, espouse can actually be made law and deliver relief to the American public. People are fed up with Democrats because we don't deliver. Why don't we deliver? Because every time we try, Republicans get in the way, or a few members of ours in the Senate say, sorry, we can't do that, even when we have majorities. If you want us to deliver, we need to also tear down the entire structure Republicans have built up over the past 40 years to keep their exhausted political ideas alive.
You just said end the filibuster. That's something that President Trump wants right now, so Republicans can get things through the Senate without having to get to 60 votes. Why would you want it?
Because the filibusters only ever protected Republicans from the consequences of their policy ideas and protected Republicans from the consequences of Democrats' policy ideas. So if Trump wants to nuke the filibuster and push through awful, hurtful policies, let him be his guest. And then his poll numbers will plummet even further. The Senate will fully turn Democrat, and then we will come in and be able to benefit from that by actually passing Medicare for all, comprehensive immigration reform, housing reform, Green New Deal, all of that, so people can actually benefit from our
if anybody else here would support abolishing the filibuster. If so, speak up.
I would. Beth Davidson.
Yeah, same.
Phillips-Staley and Ms. Conley.
I think we're taking the wrong approach trying to root out political corruption. I am a proponent of imposing term limits for members of Congress because I think a lot of the issues we are seeing is we have too many people sitting on the Hill who are there for themselves and their own personal enrichment instead of actually the people they're supposed to be serving. So I think we need to get better people there doing things for the right reasons. And that means putting in term limits, banning stock trading, forcing members of Congress to divest of their stock interests. Those are the types of things that I push for.
Ms. Davidson, you haven't had a shot yet to say generally why you think you'd be the best at bringing more affordability to the district and the country if you serve in Congress, so go ahead.
Thank you so much. I've been running on a relentless affordability agenda since day one of this campaign. And as you'll probably hear me say over and over, I'm the only one that's tackling the crisis in real time. I've cut taxes on the county legislature. And as I just said, reached across the aisle to unanimously pass a cap on the sales tax on gas here in Rockland. And I'll also echo what others have said, which is that housing is absolutely at the root of our affordability crisis. Housing is healthcare. Housing is food security. Housing is employment security. And so as vice chair of the first ever housing committee on the Rockland County legislature, I've worked to tackle that crisis by balancing the need for new homes with preserving the quality of life for current residents. And I'll also add that the childcare crisis is huge for families here in the Hudson Valley. And as a working mom, I certainly know that firsthand. And we also have to end the tariffs that I know from small businesses that I shop at and have shopped at for the last 20 years who are hurting. And it's also stopping new projects from coming into the Hudson Valley because of the added expense, the chaos, and the unpredictability that the tariffs cause.
Let's stay on affordability for a follow-up from a listener who asks a specific affordability question. Listener writes, my 20-something adult children and I are still trying to decide who to support. Our biggest issue is the fact that it is increasingly difficult for our recent college grads to find jobs, and when they do, they often don't pay enough or provide health care. What can you do in Congress to help them? Ms. Conley, you want to go first on this?
Thank you so much, Brian, and thank you, Alyssa. And this goes back to we have a responsibility to ensure the success of the current and next generation. And the frustration your kids are feeling is incredibly deserved, and we have to do better. So I believe we should be doing things like putting a cap on the interest rates for federal student loans so you don't have kids that are saddled with lifelong debt just trying to get a degree to make it to the middle class. I think we need to be investing in programs like I mentioned, the public service loan program, where we are reinforcing the importance of public service and critical career fields we need, but also helping people live in the communities that they are serving. I think the other part of this is investing in our educational programs like BOCES and CTE. So again, the pathways to the middle class are more robust, and we're meeting the economic workforce and the changing dynamics that we're seeing play out before our eyes. And so there's no silver bullet solution to how we address the affordability crisis. But Alyssa, we can absolutely make a difference in ways that help drive those things down. And I'll tell you, when it comes to healthcare, I'm a huge proponent of introducing a public option to make sure that folks can buy into Medicare at any age, regardless of marital or job status. And that'll put some downward pressure on these private sector companies too.
Mr. Sachs, creating more jobs. We know there's a job shortage for people graduating college right now, and also healthcare is in the listener's question. And I did hear you before cite Medicare for all. Go ahead.
Right, and I'll get to Medicare for all in a moment. But there is a coming white-collar and blue-collar jobs apocalypse for entry-level and even mid-level professionals through automation and through AI. So I get thinking about what happened last time there was a similar kind of jobs apocalypse on a grand scale, which was the New Deal era, trying to get out of the Great Depression. And FDR put forward a Works Progress Administration to put people to work that would be able that was beneficial not only to the community but to themselves, and to allow this country to be lifted out of what was then a pretty bad moment. So we need to think big in terms of helping people coming out of college or coming out of high school who may not have the opportunities that their parents had in a better economy or in a more job-rich era. And that can be something that the federal government can do if we have the power to deliver with a majority. Now, as for Medicare for all, yes, no one should have to choose between their health care and heating bills. And when the taxes that you pay to give health care for yourself and for everyone goes directly to your own benefit, and it's less per year than your premiums and your deductibles and your copays, then that is a transformative bit, not just of good policy, but power politics.
Right.
Because once we have that in place and Republicans try to take it away, all of us will take our pitchforks out and say, don't you dare.
I know Ms. Phillips-Staley also cited Medicare for all. Ms. Davidson and Ms. Conley, do you support that, what we might call Bernie Sanders-style Medicare for all? Ms. Davidson, do you?
I support Medicare for all who want it. I believe that is what is most achievable to help the most people right now. So allowing everyone to buy, including the caller's children, to buy into Medicare and expand Medicare to include vision and dental. Again, as someone who wears glasses and has kids
to
with
buy
braces,
in
that
with
adds
a
lot.
premium, which I think is different from what Phillips-Staley and Sachs are saying. Ms. Phillips-Staley, you want to pick that up?
Sure. Yes. No, I think we are at a critical and transformative moment in our nation where we can put Medicare for all out there and make it possible. Look, I believe that healthcare and our health is a human right. We see nations around the world, nations that we fund with our tax dollars, are able to offer this to their people. For us, as the wealthiest nation in the world, this is something that we absolutely can achieve, and that is guaranteeing that every person has a right to the health care and access that they need. I don't think we need to compromise on this anymore. I think half measures have got us where we are, to the most expensive system, right, with the poorest outcomes. So it's time to just get it right.
All right. Ms. Conley, did you say public option before? So that would be like buying in with a premium, more like Ms. Davidson's position than Ms. Phillips-Staley or Mr. Sachs, who are for more kind of full-scale Bernie Sanders Medicare for all?
I agree that healthcare, quality, affordable healthcare, should be the right of every person and not just the privilege for a wealthy few. And I think the current system is incredibly broken, and it does need some significant fundamental change. But with that, I also see how families can't afford to wait 3, 5, 7 years for us to do some grand overhaul, and they need immediate relief. And that is where I do believe that a public option where folks can buy in at any age, regardless of marital or job status, and still allows people the freedom of choice to keep their own employer or union healthcare plan, is the most realistic and possible thing to actually impact people's lives now. I think it also goes beyond this, though. We've got to rein in big pharma. We got to do things like ending pay-for-delay schemes, and we got to let Medicare negotiate for all generic prescription drugs, not making up some random cap and number.
When we continue with this forum for Democrats running in the primary to oppose Republican Congressman Mike Lawler, in New York 17, north of the city. We'll get to how much each of you wants to focus on Donald Trump in this campaign, if you are for trying to impeach him if the Democrats take the majority again, or other ways of opposing the Trump agenda. We will also get to aid to Israel for military purposes, which I know has divided some of you, and we'll take more calls, or not calls, but texts from listeners. Listeners, stay with us. Brian Lehrer on WNYC. Brian Lehrer on WNYC, as we are continuing in our lead segment today with our series of forums with candidates in competitive congressional primaries in New York, also of interest nationally, mostly because the New York Democratic primaries reflect tensions in the party and the American people as a whole, and also in this case because New York's 17th congressional district, covering 4 counties north of the city, is expected to be one of the most in-play swing districts in the country, as the winner of this primary will face Republican Congressman Mike Lawler in this purple district. Our 4 candidates are Rockland County legislator Beth Davidson. Her campaign website calls her a bipartisan problem solver. Cait Conley, former Biden administration National Security Council member and an Army veteran whose website starts with "She never backs down from a fight." Effie Phillips-Staley, a Tarrytown Village trustee and nonprofit executive whose website begins that she has dedicated her life to social justice and public service. And Mike Sachs, a lawyer turned TV journalist whose website calls him the progressive choice for New York 17. And candidates, here's another listener question via text. Listener writes, "My name is Silas. I'm an undecided voter from Rockland County. Here's my question. With Trump sending ICE to terrorize our communities, what are you doing to fight back against the administration's use of immigration enforcement to intimidate and arrest law-abiding immigrants?" I will note that another listener texts, how do the candidates feel about ICE funding? So, Mr. Sachs, I don't think you've gone first yet in any of these rounds. So why don't you take that up on ICE funding and how you would fight back, presumably you would want to, against immigration enforcement the way it's being pursued.
Of course. So I'm out for abolishing ICE. I don't think that means giving up border security or giving up criminal prosecutions in ways that protect our communities from those who wish to do them harm, whether they're here legally or illegally, whether they are citizens or not. But abolishing ICE has nothing to do with that. When you have a president's masked fascist brigades being deployed to American cities to terrorize people, that bankrupts any level of legitimacy that this organization, this entity ever had, if it had any to begin with. And we can return to the pre-DHS, pre-Patriot Act, pre-9/11 border security and immigration immigration system we did have for enforcement. That works just fine. And
Ms. Conley,
you can do that without terrorizing
abolish ICE. Ms. Conley, would you use that term?
Brian, I fought overseas to defend American freedoms, and right now what we are seeing is our own government tearing those freedoms away from people right here in our own country. I am watching the country that I was willing to die for becoming something I barely recognize. I'm not okay with any of that. It is unhinged, it is un-American. I believe in an America where everyone is beholden to the rule of law, the president, cabinet officials, and federal agents included. And so what I've called for is the impeachment of Kristi Noem, and she is now gone. I've called for thorough investigations at every level of ICE to ensure that anyone who has violated the law, to include these federal agents, are held legally accountable, and that leaders who have overseen this are removed and fired. Because this cannot be what America becomes. But the weaponization of the executive branch has also gone well beyond just this. We've seen it with Pam Bondi and the DOJ. Again, she needed to get impeached, and she is gone. But what we are seeing with the weaponization of the Department of Justice and FBI is also un-American and unhinged.
How would what you're describing be different from or better than, in your opinion, what Mr. Sachs just laid out?
I believe there needs to be legal accountability at every level within ICE, DHS, and across the federal government. I believe the abuses we've seen aren't just contained to those areas. But I do believe we also need to reform our immigration system. Look, we need to not just rein in ICE, but fix a broken immigration system that's been failing our immigrant neighbors. America should be a place where our immigrant neighbors live in hope, not fear. And it has been a system that has been broken and failing people for generations. We need to be protecting our dreamers.
Ms. Davidson, same question.
Sure. Well, again, you don't have to ask what I might do. I have already stepped up and introduced legislation to say that not a penny of our county dollars will go to help ICE deport our neighbors. And Mike Lawler has attacked me relentlessly for it. And, I have to bring up what's been in the news a lot lately. I'm glad to hear that Cait Conley is taking such a strong stand on ICE, but she is on the payroll of two AI firms that help Trump and ICE track, target, and detain law-abiding immigrants and U.S. citizens. And if you look at the website of one company she works for, it says that they support and accelerate the mission of Trump's DHS. So listeners really need to wonder who's going to fight against ICE in Congress, the one who's already doing it or the one who's helping other companies.
Ms. Conley, you got name checked there, so you get a chance to reply.
So I am incredibly disappointed to see one of my primary opponents, Beth, taking a page out of Mike Lawler's playbook and using these lies, although not surprised as a fellow political operative to see her doing this. It has already been public. These companies do not have contracts with DHS. The work that I have done is about protecting American families from terror attacks when we go to Yankees games or concerts, and I'm proud of that. I have never and do not work for Palantir. I have never and do not work for ICE, and my work does not support that. So let's focus on running on truths and actually delivering for people, because what voters are sick of is politicians and political operatives who continue to use lies and pretend like they're delivering when they're not. Going back to you, she's touting and built her campaign around this legislative initiative that she introduced, which has not even gone up for a vote in a Democratic supermajority of her own county. If she can't get things done in her own local county, how is she going to get things done in Congress?
Ms. Davidson, I think you get a right to continue here.
Absolutely. If Cait were so proud of the work she'd done, I don't know why she would have filed for an extension till long past the primary election to hide the fact from voters that she's earned $328,000, about 4 times the median national income, working for these companies. And I didn't bring up Palantir, but interesting that Cait did. And I'm very proud of the coalition I'm building around the Safety and Dignity for All Act. Within 48 hours of Mike Lawler attacking me, I mobilized a dozen nonprofit leaders standing in support of my bill. 500 people came to my county legislature meeting the next night, and we are continuing to build a coalition that's going to help us win this election and put Congress back to work for the people and not for the very wealthy, like a lot of the dark money donors that are funding Cait Conley's campaign.
Ms. Phillips-Staley, you on
Brian,
abolishing ICE? Ms. Conley, all right, one more time, but briefly.
So, like Beth, who also filed an extension for her personal financial disclosure, I filed and submitted mine 24 hours after she did. And so when we're talking about being transparent with voters, look, you're talking about someone who has claimed that she's about stopping data centers and is pushing for this. Yet when you look at the results she's delivered on her own watch, in Rockland County, we have 4 data centers that have gone up. Well, she has, again, been on her watch in the county legislature. She owns hundreds of thousands of dollars in stocks and companies related to data centers. And so what people are sick of is people saying one thing and doing another.
All right.
We're going to focus on results.
So very interesting exchange between the two of you. Ms. Phillips-Staley, you haven't gotten a response yet on whether you would abolish ICE or how you would change immigration enforcement or try to as a member of Congress if you're elected.
Sure. So, I just want to clarify that neither Conley or Davidson have said they will abolish ICE. It's because they will not abolish ICE. I will abolish ICE, and this is something that is very personal for me. My mother came to this country from El Salvador through the department that was once called Immigration and Naturalization Service. After the War on Terror in 2003, it became ICE, was combined with Customs Enforcement, and now that is why you see this militarized paramilitary force for the executive branch, given the horrors that it has committed, it cannot continue. We can separate these departments again and turn immigration and naturalization back into a civil effort, which is what it should be. Again, it's what my family came to this country under. As a trustee in the village of Tarrytown, we work closely with our police to make sure that everyone feels safe. The county of Westchester has already passed the kind of legislation that Davidson is attempting to get through in Westchester. It was introduced in January with great fanfare, and nothing has happened since. Right? Hasn't even come up for public hearings. So I would say I applaud that legislation. It is essential, but it's got to pass. It's got to pass. Who is the holdup, and how is she going to get past it?
Let me go to another listener question. Listener texts, good morning. AIPAC is once again funneling large amounts of money into some campaigns. Would you accept this money or not? How might this affect your approach to representing the district? And I'll broaden that listener's question beyond AIPAC to say I see that some of you have different positions on U.S. military aid to Israel and different characterizations of Israeli actions since the October 7th, 2023 Hamas attack in their operation in Gaza. So let's see. Ms. Phillips-Staley, why don't you go first on this?
Sure. This is the question that since I began running has come up the most with everyone I have spoken to on the trail. And they're trying their best to hold all the candidates accountable. I responded by actually going to the West Bank, going to East Jerusalem, looking at the conditions that are there. And I can say that I saw with my own eyes that these are apartheid conditions. These are not conditions that we should be supporting with our tax dollars through military aid. And though it is controversial, I also believe that what is happening is a genocide. So we've got the Leahy laws. We should not be advancing aid to anyone, to any government that is committing human rights abuses. And I'll say, when I was there, I spoke to Israelis, I spoke to Palestinians, and what they both said to me was that the only way we can stop the violence is to put pressure on this government through sanctions. And when you hear that from a person who might end up dead in a matter of days, that is something I take very seriously. So that is my position on this.
Let me clarify one thing with you. When you talk about no military aid, there is a distinction that many Democrats make between no aid for offensive weapons, but they would support continued aid for the Iron Dome and other things they consider defensive on Israel's part. Where are you on that?
The purpose, to be clear, the objective is universal human rights and the safety of everyone, right? Israelis and Palestinians. But the way to achieve it, I believe, is by putting the might of the pressure of the United States on the government of Israel, right? And that is by sanctions. So to me, it is not about defensive or offensive. If we are prioritizing the safety of everyone, we need to put all the pressure we can on the government of Israel to stop the cycle.
So not only no aid of any kind for military purposes, but sanctions. Ms. Davidson, how similar or different are you on that?
Sure. And so to your question about AIPAC originally, let's be clear, AIPAC is squarely in the camp of Mike Lawler. And I believe we need to get all big money out of politics, which is why I introduced a trust and transparency agenda for this campaign yesterday. And I've been clear since the beginning of this campaign that just as I love America and disagree with just about everything the Trump administration is doing, I can love Israel, to which my family has a very personal connection, and disagree with almost everything that Bibi Netanyahu is doing. And unlike Mike Lawler, we need to keep talking about him more in this debate. I wouldn't send a blank check to Bibi and Trump to to now fund an illegal and immoral war in Iran, which I'm sure we're going to talk about as well. And so, as someone whose lived experience is fighting anti-Semitism and raising a Jewish family, I'm the kind of Jewish Democrat you want in Congress right now, because that's what would inform my decision making in Congress.
But how much of a cutoff of military aid do you make? The offensive versus defensive distinction? And would you agree with Ms. Phillips-Staley that the U.S. should place sanctions on the Israeli government?
I do not. I think that we need to lead from the front and regain our diplomatic stance, as the beacon of democracy in the world, making sure we honor our commitments and protect Israel as the beacon of democracy in the Middle East.
So Iron Dome, yes, but you would vote for the Block the Bombs Act, which is more for offensive weapons, or would that not be accurate?
I'm running for House, not for Senate. I'm not going to say what I would have voted for then, but I do believe we need to exert more diplomatic pressure, what I'm calling a 23-state solution. The United States has just gone this alone for far too long, and the other countries in the region need to step up.
Ms. Conley?
So, as the only person on this call who has been to war, who has been to wars in the Middle East, I will tell you the last thing that you ever want to see, that I ever want to see, is another generation of anyone's children in any country have to go through that. And I do believe that we need to be using pressure to ensure a two-state solution, that ceasefires are upheld, that we are giving safety and security to all people, that we are focusing on reconstruction and how do we get what I believe needs to be a third-party peacekeeping force that both sides can agree to help ensure that ceasefire conditions are maintained. I do think we have a responsibility to continue to support the Israeli people and ensure their safety and security, and I am incredibly concerned about the rising anti-Semitism that we are seeing in our country, even in our district. And that has no place in America. Hate against any group has no place in America. But what we are seeing with this administration, continuing to get us into more and more conflicts, enabled by people like Mike Lawler, we just saw with the War Powers Resolution last week, Mike Lawler voting to yet again give Donald Trump a blank check for the war in Iran.
But that's for Iran. The question is funding to Israel for offensive weapons or no?
So Effie brought this up. There are laws already that govern what aid should be provided. The Leahy laws apply. There are State Department oversight requirements. What I have seen happen is politicians cosplaying military professionals, trying to hand select what systems should or should not go, and they don't understand what those mean. And so what we need to be focusing on is how do we ensure safety and security on both sides? How do we make sure that we are enforcing the standards that apply? And making sure, again, that we're not just focusing on the past, Brian. Like, everyone keeps talking about the past. We also need to be focusing on the future.
Standards that are already in the law. Do you think that the Biden and Trump administrations have complied with that law, with the kind of aid that they are giving to Israel for military purposes? Just trying to clarify.
They're continuing to support our ally in the Middle East, which is the only democracy. And we are continuing to see escalating conflicts across the Middle East. These are things that we need to be reining in and stopping, but we also have to acknowledge the threats that continue to exist.
Mr.
And
Sachs,
so I do.
Go ahead. Do you want to finish the thought real briefly?
I hope we also talk about Iran, Brian. That's all.
I think you're going to broadly agree on Iran, and we're going to run out of time soon. But Mr. Sachs, you on aid to Israel, you haven't gotten a shot at this yet.
Yeah. So I've been following this obsessively for the last 20 years. And if someone asked me 20 years ago, will you take AIPAC money? I'd have said no, because they've been pushing Israel further to the right into an anti-democratic abyss, making it jeopardizing its own survival as a Jewish and democratic state. Right? Mike Lawler claims he's pro-Israel, but he stands next to Itamar Ben-Gvir, who is an ally of Yitzhak Rabin's assassin. So for me, I stand with organizations like J Street, which favor stopping funding for offensive weapons in Israel so long as the occupation continues to be entrenched and the blockade of Gaza and the destruction of society there continues alongside with Hamas's own terror there. I'm also for if Israel wants funding for defensive weapons, which we should absolutely provide, we can sell that to them because they have the money for it. So that is where I stand. That's in conjunction with J Street's position as well. But I believe that we need to be both pro-Israel and pro-Palestine because there's no way out other than a two-state solution. I believe the occupation has been a cancer on Israeli society rather than a reflection of it. And I think that's something that the post-October 7th response from Israel into Gaza has opened up as a debate within the Democratic Party. What is the occupation? Is it a cancer on Israeli society or a reflection of it? And I think there are parts of the Democratic Party now that think of it as the latter. I do not. But I think we need to put every bit of American muscle behind empowering the opposition party in Israel who are standing up for its democracy as a Jewish state. And
would
also
you sanction
behind
Israel,
civil society.
like Ms. Phillips-Staley? Would you sanction
I would restore the
Israel?
I would restore the sanctions that Biden put on the settler movement and the settler leaders in the West Bank. I don't believe the government needs to be sanctioned. I think it'll be voted out this September. But the opposition party there is led by Naftali Bennett, who himself is a settler, just a kinder, nicer one, but that's still a settler who has expansionist policies. We need to empower the party in Israel that's focused on restoring its democracy to ensure that there's peace and security both for Israel and Palestine, borders and a security agreement that the entire Arab world through the Arab Peace Initiative was pushing for back in 2002.
Okay. I want to ask you all one yes or no question because I teased it earlier. We're just going to do yes or no and not really arguments, and then we'll do closing statements. Does anyone think if there's a Democratic House majority that you should consider impeaching President Trump again? There is a movement now asking Congress to do that over several alleged offenses. Yes or no, would you be interested in an impeachment inquiry into President Trump for a third time if you're elected to Congress? Mr. Sachs, yes or no?
Yes, absolutely. The fish rots from the head, and we can do more things than just impeach. We can also have aggressive oversight every single day of those who've been hurting us and stealing from us. And then we can also purport progressive legislation to give people an idea of what this country can be when we're all in it together.
No?
Absolutely. Yes, we need to use all the powers we have to address his horrendous behavior.
Ms. Conley, yes or no?
Yes, but I think we need to look more broadly too at the cabinet officials who are violating the law and hold them accountable as well.
And Ms. Davidson?
I'd consider it, but it's very far down on my list. I'm interested in solutions now to make people's lives better every day.
All right. Now it's time for closing statements. Up to 1 minute each. We randomly selected an order. It'll be Conley, Davidson, Sachs, Phillips-Staley. Up to 1 minute each. Ms. Conley.
Thank you so much, Brian, and to the listeners for tuning in. Look, we talked about a lot of really, really important issues today. And we have a lot of work to do in America to make sure that our best days are still ahead of us, which I fundamentally believe. But the only way we make that happen is if we get to govern to fix these things. And the only way we get to govern is if we win. And so at the end of the day, we need to beat Mike Lawler in November to help take back the House and get control and check in this reign of terror that is the Trump administration, but also solve the very real problems that are facing families all across the Hudson Valley in the country. And when it comes to beating Mike Lawler, this is going to take a hard fight of bringing people together across the district. We have watched Mike Lawler take on and beat 2 Democratic politicians already. He has never had to face someone like me. If we want a different kind of outcome, it's time for a different kind of Democrat.
Ms. Davidson.
Thank you, Brian. And thank you to everyone who's tuned in this morning to hear from us because we are very different candidates. And it's critically important who we choose to go up against Mike Lawler. This district has rejected DC-picked candidates twice. New York 17 deserves a congresswoman who didn't just show up here because they saw a political opportunity, but who really knows our diverse communities and is already doing the work to put this country back together. In this primary, I'm the only one who's fighting back against Donald Trump in real time, passing common sense gun safety legislation, lowering costs for our families, and standing up to ICE. And I'm also the only Democrat who's proven I not only know how to fight, I know how to win. From electing dozens of Democrats all across the country to leading the slate that delivered the first ever Democratic supermajority to the Rockland County legislature right in Mike Lawler's backyard. I'm running for Congress because after living and serving here for 20 years, I know how to roll up my sleeves and deliver results that make a difference in people's lives. That's the leadership that meets this moment, and it's a leadership I'll take to Congress next year. Thank you all again.
Mr. Sachs.
We need to break the billionaire-backed system designed to block us. Period. And we right now need people in Congress, not just who are telling us what we will do, but how we will deliver it. Absent that, absent a vision for the how, for delivering for the American public, we will be thrown out of office for not delivering, and the fascists will come back in. So how do we turn this page? We need to find where the power is. And Trump won't be in power forever. We in the 120th Congress need to set an agenda with bold, progressive legislation akin to the New Deal and the Great Society that delivers for real people and all the people. And in doing so, we need to set the stage for an alternative vision of what America can be so that the 2028 elections can follow with presidents who follow our lead. When we have a trifecta, we need to make sure we tackle extreme partisan gerrymandering, the Senate filibuster, and take on this Supreme Court, which is the final boss constructed to prevent us from getting our will. That is the vision we need to take forward so that we can enter a new era. We can have a political system that serves all of us, and we can have bipartisanship on our terms in a country that works for all of us.
And Ms. Phillips-Staley.
So I got into this race because a group of Latino activists in my community asked me to fight for them. So not because the money was there, not because the DCCC or the establishment was behind me, but because there isn't a single voter in this district that we can afford to write off. Not Muslims, not Latinos, not young people watching their generation get priced out of where they grew up or their planet burn up. So the system keeps telling us that running scared is the only path forward, that we have to trim our positions down, that we have to be palatable to donors and really hope that's enough. But that strategy has lost this seat twice. It leaves the people in Spring Valley and Haverstraw and Ossining with no real reason to show up. So I'm offering something different. 66,000 new homes, universal childcare, Medicare for all, and an immigration system built on dignity, not fear, and a foreign policy that applies the same standard to everyone. This is the structural, but I just want to be one more thing. Working Family Party endorsed, proud of that. I'm the real progressive in this race.
All right. Well, thank you all very much for engaging. Early voting begins on Saturday, June 13th around New York. Primary day itself is Tuesday, June 23rd. All four of you, thank you very much for engaging in this forum. We hope it helped inform those listeners who might be voting in this New York 17 Democratic primary. Thank you all again. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks for having us, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
WNYC's journalism and storytelling is heard by millions of passionate listeners. Sponsors of our programming gain our listeners' attention and their respect. Learn about how your organization can support WNYC and WNYC Studios at sponsorship.wnyc.org.